Firstly, thank you, thank you, thank you. When I reached out to people, I had my list of like, I would love to talk to these people. A, because I love talking to them. I love all the time that we've ever got to have a coffee, to sit down, to have dinner, whatever it is. I love the conversations. I love the overlap of creativity, that when you talk about things, I understand the meta of what you're talking about and usually none of the details. So it's wildly fascinating. And I think I'm going to try and get into that. And what we're trying to do with this is to talk to creative people with ostensibly glamorous, fun jobs, but talk about not that bit of it. Talk about the bit which in the kitchen is the mise en place. It is the ingredients. So the relationship between the ingredients you have and the way you cook the recipe, I find wildly more exciting than the end product. And I find the end product exciting. So the thing I'd love to talk about are those moments.
Yeah, I love it. Me too. I'm obsessed with process.
Well, this is going to be easy and lovely. And you'll have to excuse, I want to get out of jail card that I'm not going to understand a lot. So I might keep saying, can you explain that? Okay, so we've talked about, I'm going to kind of like summarize a whole career in about 30 seconds. So please don't be offended. But from being a teenager and having the gusto, some form of insane caffeinated energy to just get things going, to co-founding the Row. And then the stuff that I think I've engaged most with is Sherman Field and seeing it built from literally nothing. So maybe chronologically, can I ask, as a teenager and now, what do you find easy?
Well, I don't find the word easy to begin with, because I used to have that in my vocabulary and be like, oh yeah, that's easy. Yeah, I can do that. That's easy. I've learned as I've gotten older in life that nothing is easy, that everything that's quality takes time. So what I find comes natural, maybe that's a better way for me to explain it. What I find comes natural is listening to one's intuition. I think having a sensibility of style, having a sensibility of form and scale and proportion come natural to me. Other things like engineering, chemistry, calculus, never ever, nor ever will come natural to me or will be easy for me. So my mind is definitely more of the creative. However, like I'm obsessed with, process and making things. So what comes natural to me is like building something from nothing, building something from scratch. And where do I begin? The daunting part is always, where do you begin, right? But I think once I kind of explore and study something and really get myself adjusted in a specific area, what comes natural to me is like diving in and thinking how I'm going to create or communicate an idea. And maybe I start with clay forms and then I create a link, and that link then scales down into something smaller, and et cetera. So I guess what is just really listening to intuition, breaking things down in a simple way that I can understand them, and then just going at it full force. So I'm not intimidated by I would say by the beginning of something. I'm excited by the beginning of something. I've been a part of startups since I graduated, and
before that
business. Yeah, I guess so. Having my own accessory business when I was 15. Yeah. So I guess starting something has come natural. To come full circle, answering your question is I think with many entrepreneurs, that they have to kind of invite that fear and danger of the unknown, and definitely putting myself in a box. I've been in a box. I've had to design in a box. I've had to do all those things in my past. Better work comes when I'm out of the box.
So can we go all the way back to the beginning, right?
Sure.
And I want to do even like, it would probably, if this was a movie, it'd be the pre-origin story, because there was a moment where you were designing accessories at 15.
Yes.
But at 14 and 6 months or 14 and 9 months, what music were you listening to? What magazines were inspiring? Were you in the libraries looking at, like, what's the spark that got you to go, clearly there's a kind of, and I'll paraphrase things I've read, but like the entrepreneurialism of growing up around in a single mother home and being driven. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. But the other thing is how you direct the energy. So what music were you listening to? What fashion were you inspired by?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm just trying to think back to like what concerts I went to as a kid. Yeah. I used to go to the Dave Matthews concerts, which you wouldn't find me at today, but at the time I would go there and I would get the Face magazine. And it just was recently acquired by Carly Kloss, I think, if I'm getting this all correct, or actually it was ID, but the Face for a long period has been not in existence. It was a London British magazine that was very on the pulse of fashion. And it was showing me things I had never seen before. So things that Vogue would never be in print with Vogue or Elle or Harper's. And it was really, really avant-garde. And so I'd say 9 months, like I was really into statement, bold, aggressive pieces. And that could range from jewelry to the way I would dress to things like that. I had short black hair at one point because I used to write for a magazine and they would send me to salons and I'd get a haircut, and I went to a rock and roll place and they chopped everything off and dyed my hair black. But all of those things, I think, contributed to me starting, a business. But I think, I've just always been a super curious person. So yes, you would find me in libraries. You'd find me looking at microfilm, which I don't know happens today.
I don't think it happens, but I know I'm that age.
You remember that?
Yeah, I'm that age too, yeah.
Yeah, so I was always just very intense as a child, but that stemmed even before age 14. Like as of age 5, I've been an incredibly intense child, which can be directed either way. Like you can either go super in the deep end and get caught up in drugs, or you can kind of go the other way. And I was lucky to have the right kind of mom who raised me to go turn right.
Now, when you do that. Yeah. When you are in the library, when you're with the microfilms, when you are looking at Face magazine, is it with a view to do something, or is this just consumption's a dirty one, but is it just like loading yourself up with influence and seeing wherever it will go?
I think so. Like nothing is like, I'm going to open up this magazine to be inspired, I think inspiration just happens, right? So where was I exactly at 9 months? It's hard for me to put an exact finger on it, but I do remember going to the Dave Matthews concerts. I do remember looking at the Face magazines. I do remember going into libraries and going deep in any areas of interest, whether it's architecture, art, looking at Donald Judd's work, looking at Le Corbusier, whomever it is that I'm interested in. Mies van der Rohe, artists that I'm into, it was just kind of surrounding myself with it. And this is also before age of social, Facebook and Instagram and all of those things. So in order to kind of gain information, encyclopedias were still around, right? So you have to look it up. That's how you teach yourself. That's how you educate. And then I was just always super curious. So on the weekends, my mom would drive me around to different stores and I would look at clothing and look at jewelry and look at art. And I'd go with my mom. And I think that's how I just saw things essentially.
I think that maybe there's a bit there. And again, I don't want to be overly romantic about the past, but there was a thing where you did the research, you made the thing, you called the stylists. And there's a certain amount of inherent respect that has to be seen because you've done the work. You didn't chance upon something. And I don't even know if there's a question there, but it's you can now fall into these places.
Exactly.
And you didn't used to be able to fall into them. It had to be that you act. If you found yourself at a door knocking on the door, it was not by accident.
It was all intentional. I think this goes back to intentionality, right? Everything that you did, even though I was young and naive, it was all done with intention. I took sewing classes at Joann's Fabric, not knowing I was going to be a fashion designer when I was 12 years old, but with the intention of making things for myself, being a maker. The word being a maker, the maker, that concept too, didn't really exist. That's kind of a more topical term now for makers, right? But these are all things that like you naively do as a kid. And those were just the things that I had a penchant for. It was sewing. It was taking apart rosaries and turning them into necklaces. It was going to flea markets and sifting through everything from clothing to jewelry to like cool frames, like just everything, posters, like just kind of finding things and surrounding oneself. But I think it is intention.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what that intention is going to direct towards, right? But it's doing things with intention. Calling the wardrobe stylist when I was age 15 with my leather accessories and calling them up randomly in alphabetical order and going into each one, getting voicemails most of the time. But those that I was able to connect with, you know, and then I'd go visit them at their studio and bring my wares, bring my leather accessories and show them things. And, you know, sometimes it worked and they put our pieces on some actors or musicians, and sometimes it didn't. And that was all fine. But all of those things prepared me for what I'm doing today, right? It's like that 10,000 hours concept of Malcolm Gladwell. It's like all of those things prepare you for your future, and you're not really aware of that at the time. But later in life, it all kind of accumulates, and then it prepares you for something bigger.
Yeah, I do. I think that good ideas are usually obvious in hindsight. But also this thing that we're talking about, like at the time, the perspective just isn't there. But when you step back, now, when doing kind of research for this, the tactile and your desire to feel and experience and wear come up over and over again. So then I'm clearly conflating years of your life, but you co-found The Row with Mary Kate and Ashley. And I can imagine a white hot kind of cultural core of idea. And the only reason I can imagine that is because that still resonates now. But what were the things that didn't change from 15 years old to that moment? Is it about the touch of fabric? Is it I'm sure the scale changed. I'm sure finances changed. I'm sure collaboration changes. But what didn't change at that moment?
It's a great question. I guess, like you said, it's like you're born with that. I think that's what didn't change. Is like what was me from birth, what was me now. Like I'm the same person.
Yes.
I just know a few more things, you know, like, and I think you are kind of born that way or you're not. And I think you can learn, and I think you can kind of funnel certain interests into an area, but I think you are born a certain way where if you like to work with your hands, if you see things, if you're a learner in picture as a learner in text, like you learn differently. And I think I was more of that visual learner, tactile learner, getting my hands dirty. Like I just think I was born that way. And I can go back to like thinking, I mean, I haven't even thought about this until this conversation, but my favorite thing to do as a kid when I lived in Northern California was on the weekends to go to the Exploratorium. And in the Exploratorium, which still exists today, it's just at a different location, is a room that's pitch black. You cannot see anything. You don't know where in or out is. You don't know where up or down is. It's literally pitch black. And all you see, well, you see nothing, but all you feel are things around you. And so you can like climb up a ladder, and then you fall into what feels like beans. And then like you can hear voices around you. Your parents can hear you, but you just can't see anything. And so you have to feel your way out, right? And that was my favorite place to be. So now in retrospect, I've never thought about this nor have spoken about it until this conversation, but I think that might share with you just being a tactile person and finding comfort in it versus fear.
Yeah.
And so I think everything I've done from early on, I've been making with my hands, you know, even cutting up patterns, but like recutting them up. Like, so I take a pattern from McCall's or Vogue and I would sew it. And then I didn't like darts, right? So I would find a way to avoid a dart or move a dart placement or things like that. But this is me at age 12, really not knowing anything, but like using my hands and refiguring something and then sewing it and understanding how it fits on the body and why you're supposed to have a dart for your apex, et cetera. Learning all of that by figuring it out, you know? And the only way to figure it out is to use your own hands and not watch the person next to you, you know?
Now, but is the process to sit and think alone, and then to draw alone, and then to build alone, and then to share? Because I suppose that one of the things I'm trying to get at there is you did it alone, and then I assume you found yourself in a place where you weren't alone.
Right.
It's a complete company. So what did you sketch alone and build alone still, and then share? Or, and because I know from going through art college, I was convinced, I mean, this is about my childhood too, I was convinced I would be a creative person by myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then I realized, God, at some point, probably 22, I was like, wow, other people are cool, aren't they?
Yeah.
So how did you navigate that thing?
Yeah. It's interesting because, I'm trying to just think about like my childhood and, you know, all of those things. In a way, I was kind of a loner. Like, in a way, I did all of these things on my own, right? Or I did them with my mom. Like, she drove me to places, right? She drove me to the flea market. She drove me to a leather factory in downtown. Like, I would find it somehow, or find a leather supplier on Western and Hollywood. But I did all of those things alone, you know? And I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't feel alone, if that makes sense. Because I guess with the thing I was creating really was fulfilling. I think you really learn to collaborate, definitely, like as you get older, right? And you do projects together, even in high school. You know, you do book reports with other people, you know, other kids. But just creatively, just thinking about all of my jobs in fashion related, like it's all in a group, you know, like, yes, ultimately it was my responsibility to sketch and design a collection, have it done by this date, et cetera, and for it to then be purchased by stores and be a huge success, you know, yes, ultimately. But I think what it boils down to is ultimately, even when I've worked for others, I've always, part of that has been creating something for myself. And creating something for myself, essentially. I'm not really just creating it for myself. I am creating it for others because they're going to produce X amount of units and it's going to be in so many stores and blah, blah, blah. But if I can relate to it and I can understand it and I have a desire to wear it, then others will too. I don't know if that.
No, it massively does. And I'm now going to do something. I'm going to do something weird now, but that is that at a time when we can have audiences of millions of people, there's a moment where we've kind of misbranded selfishness as bad. But actually, to be purely introspective, you have to imagine you're not the only one. In a really unselfish way, you have to go, if I can't be the only one that's into this. And there was this thing that I realized 10 or 20 years ago, which was nearly everyone I've met, I'm going to make a noise, made this noise. You go, and you try and get it to click really slowly. And when I've done that, I do this as an experiment. I do it in front of people and people go, oh my God, I used to do that. And I was like, that is one of those things that we all did and we've never talked about. And I think the thing you're talking about is that if you're consuming culture and you're part of the world, you can design for one person you and know that other people as part of this community, it's going to resonate with.
It's like a universal truth. It's like that transcendent concept of universal truths. There are universal truths in everything that we do, right? Yeah. That's the thing that binds us as a human race, right? Yeah. So it's finding what that universal truth is, not to get so philosophical, but it's finding what that thing is in what you do. And when you hit it, you then hit hard.
Yes.
Because once you can figure out what that thing is, and again, you don't know, but like you believe it wholeheartedly, then I've always believed then other people will be excited by it. And I remember this too. Like I remember when I was working for a brand and I wanted to work with amazing stylists, amazing, runway set producers who would help me with this collection, with the way it looked, et cetera. And I reached out to like the top. And I was like, they're probably going to say no. Like, they're going to say no. Like, it's cool. I'm cool with that. But I'm going to go into that meeting or go into that phone call super excited. They're going to hear and see my energy and feel the excitement. And they can just say no. So what? Say no. So I did that. And all of those people said yes. And I think it's because I believe so wholeheartedly in something and was so passionate that they saw that passion and heard that passion that they got excited about the same thing. Even if they really ultimately it's not their area of interest, or they have bigger and better designers to work for, or they're getting paid more by someone else, like it's that thing that you have that you don't even necessarily know, but you're just so excited about it, and it transcends, you know? And so I think that's something I've learned in life is to really follow that. And what that stems from is intuition. It's like you believe in that and nothing's going to shake you.
Can I ask about this? It's I can't stop smiling because I think these are universal creative pieces, which is about the relationship between excitement and confidence. Okay. And then also the kind of the fragile nature of creativity. You're putting something out there that is weak and unformed and can be killed at any moment. Now you come across as a confident person, and you've shared things, even with me, at a stage where they weren't fully formed. Did you build confidence over the kind of chapters of your life, or does excitement trump confidence?
I believe that confidence, there's been times where I've had doubt.
Yeah.
But overall, I would say inherently, I've always been an incredibly confident person, individual. And I think that level of confidence came, like, I don't know if it's directly related or indirectly related, but like having my dad pass away when I was 5, like I just grew up very quickly. I didn't have time to worry about what other kids thought of me. I didn't, of course, we all do to some degree, but I just like perspective, the idea of perspective just hits you. And of course, at age 5, I didn't understand why he passed away. I didn't understand it. But like as each year went on and as I took on more and more responsibility in the family, I think that indirectly helped form the level of confidence that I feel I've had most of my life, you know? And I think that level of confidence, whether it came from that experience or also it's come from the way my mom raised me and really supporting all of my creative endeavors and giving me that confidence in myself. You know, it's maybe come from all of these other places or influences, but I would say at age 20, I was just as confident as I was at age 16. And as age 41 now, I feel like I have had that confidence since I was young. And mind you, for me, socially, I was always a very social person, but like it was challenging in high school being a confident female and having girlfriends.
Yeah.
And what I experienced was those that were not confident had a lot of friends. And so I was kind of like, as I mentioned before, I felt like I was kind of a loner most of like my childhood. It continued on through high school, and I was the kid who was friends with everybody, but like I never had a group. And I think that in a way it was intimidating. Other people may have been intimidated by me. The teachers weren't. I was friends with the teachers. I'd go sit with them at lunchtime, have a great conversation. But so I think that level of confidence has kind of been with me for a while. But I don't think you're necessarily born with confidence, but I think that things that happen that really impact your childhood can either help give you that confidence and how you grow from that or not.
Can I ask something about that in relationship to leading companies? So we're not at Sherman Field yet. We're at unnameable company.
It's cool.
I have a work coach. Thank you, Robert, if you're listening. And one of the things he talks about is the relationship between the confidence you have and the distance you force. And I'll say that a different way, which is when you're working with younger people or people with slightly less confidence, your ebullience and energy and confidence and seeming unwaveringness, one would assume that that allows people to grow and blossom and fail because you've got them. It can be seen as a distance mechanism where people are like, I can't relate to Danielle because she can walk into any room. She research is fun for her. She's clearly successful. Is this something that you're aware of as you lead people?
Yeah, I think, a friend of mine told me this, that it's really lonely at the top.
Yeah.
And I think as I've grown, I started off as a second assistant to a senior designer was my first job. Like I started off basically in the mailroom,
Yeah.
I've learned that as I've grown in my career and in my fashion career, I got to a certain place where I wasn't using my hands as much. I wasn't as tactile as I wanted to be because I was at that level where you're not.
Yeah.
And someone else is making things, right, with their hands. So I think, I've learned that it can be distancing and all of those things. And I've seen that, I've felt that for sure. But something I've always kept with me, and I still remind myself, is like people that you meet that like get you, you don't have to prove anything. Like they just get you. And those I've learned have been my longest lasting relationships, or even like your wife. We connected day one. I met her day one because we're of the same ilk.
Yeah.
Like she's a self-starter. She is incredibly strong-willed and determined. I love women like that. I'm not intimidated by women like that. Women like that make me like excited to like get to hang out with them because I can relate to that. The ones that are maybe not that, it's harder for me to relate to, and they don't necessarily even understand me, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that's cool. I get it. I respect it. But like I've learned that like I am most attracted to those that are super determined and focused and have maybe had certain life experiences similar to mine and have kind of just grown up,
Oh, it's like living with a wild animal. But when I first met her, I felt exactly the same, and I still do now. And there are days I'd like to turn the 10 down to 9, but I signed up for 10, and that's what it is.
You signed up for 10 plus. Yeah, so I think, I haven't changed my ways. I think I have worked with both those that are younger than myself, and I've also worked for those that are older than myself. I've had to manage teams of people who are older than myself. And I've had to learn how to do that, not having formal training in any of that. But I think ultimately, you treat people with respect, no matter what. You respect those that you work with as an equal. And I think you then get the reciprocal. You only don't get the reciprocal, I think, if there's huge insecurities on one person's part. I think if one person feels hugely insecure by you, then the relationship doesn't work, right? And there's nothing you can do to remedy that. That's why for those relationships, I'm just like, don't let that bother you. Like, just move on because those people don't get you, they'll never get you. And that's okay, because those that do get you. And that's what it's about.
Okay, so then I'm going to summarize that really quickly to ask the next question. So you start off making things by hand, yourself, driven by your mum. You, in both ways. You then grow brands. And to your point, success comes with seniority. Seniority comes with distance. There comes a moment where, and I think this is interesting, as 10, 15 years ago, Forbes did this thing about the most successful, like the Fortune 100 companies and what the leaders do. And it wasn't golf, it was gardening. And I think it was because it's such a direct relationship You literally, your hands are in the dirt and you literally get to see something grow. And in their jobs, they might be 7, 10 levels away from the person doing the thing that was the reason they got into the thing. So let's jump now from you're in these positions of seniority where you've essentially done every job underneath you, but you're in some way divorced from it. You have children, you have a breath, then you restart, reinvigor, reimagine a brand. Can you just talk about that for a minute?
Yes. So I had my first baby. A few weeks later, I had a runway show. That was wild because, I mean, as a woman, your body's just even repairing. So doing model castings with the baby, everything with the baby, at the office till midnight with the baby, husband sleeping under your desk with the baby. Like it was pretty wild. After I had the show, then I took my maternity, then I went back to work, and then I realized, okay, I've done this. Like I've been a creative director, I've been a design director, I've been a fashion designer, I've been a second assistant, I've done all these jobs, etc. I've done this. Like I think I'm ready to like have a break. And whenever I've worked, I've given all of myself to every position I've had. And even though people from the outside are like, Danielle, like don't care so much, like just give half of yourself. I've never been able to give half of myself. When I've worked for others, worked with others, it's always been all of me, right? So after having some perspective, more perspective with having a child and raising like a human, that they actually need you like at certain times and you like don't have a choice, that I think I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. And I had left my last position working and for Eden, and then I was living in LA, and I said, okay, I moved to LA, and I had met with Fast Retailing after this, and that's a company that's in Japan. It's the largest company in Japan, and they own Uniqlo, J Brand, Comptoir, etc. And I was flown out there with my family, and I honestly had no idea why I was flown out there. I just knew that I was meeting with Mr. Nice-san, the founder and president of the company. So I met with him. We had great conversations. It was a 15-minute conversation. That was the time slot I had. But leading up to that, I had visited every Uniqlo in Tokyo, basically. Long story short is after that meeting, I was offered a very senior position. I ended up declining the position, wanting to be living in LA with my family. And then 2 years later, I got another phone call saying, can you do some consulting work for us? Which I did. And I had a brand in Japan with my name and the brand I was working for, et cetera. So I was consulting. I had created a consulting company so I could do this kind of work. Simultaneously, I was also consulting with another fashion brand in LA, et cetera. So while I left the fashion world full time, I then transitioned to a consultant, which I was very hesitant in doing because, again, I've always given myself. So I'm like, how can I consult? Like, that seems, I just feel like an asshole, like you can just have this much of me, but like, so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I'll try it. My husband's like, Danielle, just try it. Like, how to do all of these things. Like, you could be a valuable consultant. Just try it. So anyway, they hired me. I did this collection for them. It did very well. Then they wanted me to do full collections for them. And working with Fast Retailing then helped finance Sherman Field. So like while I was actually working for another company and I had a paycheck and I can help support the family, I also can funnel some of that money towards creating a true fine jewelry brand. But of course, before I created anything, I was like, this is an area I need to study from beginning to end. So I started going to the Getty Library here in LA, and you can basically check out books on anything art related, architecture, art, sculpture, etc. And I studied the history of jewelry from Egyptians all the way to present day. And that's where I discovered a period that really got me excited, which was the retro period. And that's 1940s, just after Art Deco and before World War II. And it's really about coming off the war and really heavy statement, bold pieces. Like, you know, it was antithetical to what came before in the sense that it wasn't feminine per se. It wasn't delicate. It wasn't Art Nouveau. It wasn't like round, spindly things or florals. It was like statement, bold, in your face, things that looked like hardware or machinery from the war. Like, it was really cool pieces that I've never seen before. So having that period to be like, this is something exciting, that inspired me then to go find those pieces in the world. And other than just finding them online and looking at them, because you can't understand the scale of something or the weight of something or the movement and how it feels on the body, I then started going to antique shows in Vegas. And they have this amazing antique show where they have over 250 vendors of watch dealers, jewelry dealers from all over the world. And it's all antique jewelry. So I was able to then experience the retro period jewelry firsthand at these shows. And then from that show, I learned what I loved and I got to feel it and put it on and understand it. And then also find the designers that I had studied and find their real work in person, which was really cool. And then I also learned that there were only 2 chains, like neck chains, from the whole show of, again, 250 vendors that I liked and that I would want to wear myself. And I was like, how is this when I'm meeting with like hundreds of vendors who have from all over the world, Paris, Netherlands, everywhere, who are coming to the show with their wares, and there's literally 2 chains that are cool and interesting and different. And I was like, that's where I'm going to begin. Like, I'm going to make chain. I had no idea how complex making chain is, how technical it is. But then I came back and I was like, all right, I know I can sketch these things, but I need to create an actual form. So then I researched and I went to the art store and I bought a bunch of different types of clay. And then I found a clay that's a Sculpey clay that doesn't harden too quickly, nor is it too soft where it doesn't take form. And it had the right, you know, concentration of whatever it is that makes it clay, where it worked perfectly for making large scale chain. And I literally took my clay forms. The first factory, I went to a factory in New York, hearing about this amazing factory that works with very notable brands. And I came in with my clay forms, met with a group of Italians, and they looked at me like I was totally insane, you know?
What were they expecting?
Well, because no one comes in with clay forms.
Okay, that's like, okay. That yeah, okay.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't know anyone who works in this way to this day.
Did you know it at the time, or it was just what you did naturally?
No, I just did naturally because I'm like, how can I communicate a chain that's circular and rectangular at the same time? Yes. How do you communicate that? Can you sketch it? Sure, yeah. But then the link that connects to it, the shape of that doesn't actually go over. It's the same profile, the same height, but then it still works. Like I had to like sculpt it out and then I faceted on this side and this side and this side. Like, how do I explain the facets? Does it have 4 facets? Does it have 5 facets? Like, does the ring connect here and leave this much of space in between? Like, I had to figure that out with something physical. To be able to communicate it. And then from there, the way that we make chain today is that I still craft with clay and I make little mock-ups in clay, even rings and things like that I just want to understand on my hand and the scale and the size and things like that. But you can take the clay form and then you create a CAD, which is like a digital rendering of it. And then they map out the scale of it. So there's technical specs that are then attributed to the actual chain. So you can say, oh, okay, I want the overall chain to be 5 millimeters by 3. The inside height is this, the outside width is this. Like you give general specs, but then the CAD artist like is more technical and they actually do like really research technical specs. So then it's like a workable piece. Mind you, you still go through this 5 or 6 times perfecting the CAD. You do a wax print from here, then you look at the wax, then maybe you want to test it out in metal. There's all these stages that you go through until you get a perfect finished piece. But it's like I can only create in that way where there's that process involved of perfecting until we then get something that I love. But yeah, that's kind of how Sherman Field began. And the one part I missed was like, how do you find a place that then manufactures your pieces, right? Especially being and having no name in jewelry. Like my fashion career, who cares? Like to these people, it's a different industry. It doesn't translate. However, one factory I had met with, so I've gone to a few different factories at this point. I've taken my clay samples. One factory did these little samples for me. I priced it out like a 16-inch chain from what they gave me, and it was like 10 times a Cartier chain. I'm like, there's no way I can compete. So then I go to another factory and I give them my clay samples, and then they make an iteration of it, and it comes out terribly. And then I go to another factory, and then they start making it, and they make me one finished necklace because everything worked. Like, they actually were able to understand my clay forms. They created CADs, they printed it, they then made a finished piece. And then guess what? That factory gets sold by a larger jewelry company. So then I'm left with no factory and just clay forms and a few little samples and one chain. And then I find my factory that I'm with today, till since we've launched. And I go in there with what I have and saying something to the effect of what I've done with my fashion career, because that's all that I can really, show. And thankfully, the factory owner was really into what I was telling him, because I didn't have much to show him of my pieces I had created. And they took a chance on me. And for one full year, not only were they making me like little samples of everything, but they were also mixing gold for us from scratch. So I didn't like the gold of like present day jewelry. A lot of gold is too green. It has too much zinc in it. So I asked him and he said, yes, we can do it for you. And so basically we mix and create our own signature proprietary blend of certified 18 karat gold. But to make that, you have to tweak. You take 24 karat, but then you also have to add other alloys to it. And it becomes 18. And then you add zinc and copper and different percentages, and you have to continually tweak it and tweak it and tweak it until you get the right hue. And that hue matched some of the pieces I had bought at these shows, these like retro jewelry pieces I had bought from those shows I attended. Exactly. And I was like, all right, we nailed it. Now, every little sample of chain that I've made with them, let's launch. Brilliant. Then we were ready to launch. But like it took 3 years of that back and forth and factory to factory to factory to factory to make it, to have just a few samples of chain, one ring, it was like a very small collection. And then my vintage collection. So in the beginning, I was actually showing my vintage collection along with my Sherman Field collection. And the response I got was surprising to me. I thought people were going to just go for the vintage and just buy some vintage pieces and say, thanks very much. But what I learned is a lot of people said, I'm really into what you're doing more than your vintage collection. So then I was like, okay, I'm just going to like keep on building it out. And then if now I don't sell my vintage or I don't show my vintage, it's more about just Sherman Field. And now I have like a full comprehensive collection, but it started off super small.
It's really interesting because in watches,
yes,
having a movement from the brand that builds the body is still a thing, right? Like it doesn't mean that like ETA movements aren't great, but there's something really pure about owning the process from beginning to end. And you almost single-handedly directed the process from beginning to end. So just a couple more questions, but one of them is about kind of, that was almost a rebirth, right? It's a rebirth of you being one-on-one with craft. And then one of the things and it's an observation that just, it literally might not be true, but I'll ask it anyway, which is everywhere you've been, there's been a relationship that's intimate with the consumer, with the person that's buying it. Now, whether that is you calling up personally with leather cuffs, whether that is the row not selling online for a period of time, like, because it's asking people to collaborate in the process, to at least to understand a little bit of the process. Now, I'm sure that the answer is we didn't have money to do anything else, but I think it's amazing that trunk shows and the way you started was really intimate. So you couldn't buy something unless you'd felt it. It wasn't a click, deliver interaction. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everything was, I mean, to this day, our best interactions are when it's firsthand, and whether it's a client flying in from Tahoe or whether it's someone coming in from Aspen or whatever, it's firsthand. And of course, I didn't know it was going to be kind of our path towards success, but I've always believed like something can't just look pretty, like you have to, even a garment, like you got to turn it inside out. You have to see how it's constructed. Does it have hymo in the chest piece for a tailored coat? Like you need to break it down. You need to feel it. And you only understand something when it's on you, And I think especially with something that is on your body, like you have to really have that personalized experience where you're picking it up, you're putting it on, and you can have that relationship where you're understanding it. And I think, our jewelry is kind of antithetical, especially launching 5 years ago, to what was the norm at the time. Like the popular thing was like little lightweight pieces and, like dainty jewelry and dainty earrings. And, you couldn't get more kind of like opposite from what we, how we launched and to this day and what we create. Like every response or most responses when people come in here, they're like, oh, I knew I loved it online, but seeing it in person, like I love it even more. Or like, oh, this is so heavy. Oh, this is so heavy. This is so comforting. And that's kind of been the response from the beginning, is that, and the feeling and wanting people to come in and being like, okay, like they don't have to buy anything. Like maybe it's not going to be for everyone, which is totally fine. It's not. The brand isn't for everyone, that's for sure. But, they need to come and like feel it and experience it. So even to this day, when people reach out to me on Instagram or people reach out to me like online, I'm always trying to see if there's an opportunity to show them in person, because it completely changes their interaction with the brand and with the jewelry itself, more importantly. So, I actually try not to sell people stuff online. They're like, I know what I want. I know what I want. I'm like, okay, are you sure? And they're like, I'm sure. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, great. Of course. Like, I'm not going to deny an order. And we still do get orders online and stuff. But, I really try to get people, or I fly to meet with people, or I do a trunk show in Dallas or, New York, et cetera, so I can have that firsthand experience. Because to me, that is the most valuable opportunity with someone who's going to experience your product for the first time. And that first experience, it's like the most important thing.
Do you put it in their hand? Do you put it on? Like, because I mean, sometimes if I'm reading a script and it sounds silly, I will ask people to close their eyes in the same way I read a book to my son, right? When somebody first experiences it, what's the reveal? Is it them putting it? Is it you putting it on them?
Well, sometimes, because here's the thing with fine jewelry, which I find is kind of silly, which is people are like nervous to put it on, they're nervous to touch it. And most people experience fine jewelry in cases, locked cases, right? The whole process is intimidating. So when the opportunity arrives, and it can be in an intimate setting and it can be at someone's home, and we do not publicize these things, it's all private invitation, then we are showing our pieces and they're not in locked cases on top of someone's table, and they get to experience. And if they are hesitant to try things on, then yeah, I'm like, here, and I
I've
do
seen
put
that.
it.
I've seen that. I think that's maybe that's what I was getting at. Yeah. I think it's lovely. It's like not wanting the first slice of cake or whatever the thing is when someone says,
There's a
try
weird
mine.
hesitancy. Yeah. I've definitely done it. I think like I'm inherently comfortably like a salesperson. And when I have had small jobs growing up and selling clothing, etc., literally on the floor, like at an outlet, like selling clothes, because it was like the only job that would pay me. I nailed it because I was really good at just getting people to try things on, and then them like finding what worked best for them. And in the same way, the jewelry, it's like I really do only steer people towards things that are good for them and make sense for them and in their comfort zone and things like that. And I think I naturally just have an inclination for that. And it does come natural to me. It's not like an awkward thing for me. And if people seem hesitant or awkward or uncomfortable, like I'm putting things on myself all the time. And that sometimes breaks the ice too, So I think you just really, maybe it's because I've worked with a lot of different people. I have had to manage a larger group of people. Like I've understand that comfort with all different types of people, all ages, and how to work with them. And I think that's definitely contributed to like what I'm doing today. Like we have an 85-year-old client, who wears our pieces. Wonderful. And has every jewelry of piece you can imagine on the planet. But then they saw one of our pieces in WSJ and they said, wow, I've never seen a bracelet that mixes white gold and yellow gold in this way. I have to have it. Okay, so awesome, great. I think that process really does come natural. And I think my goal always is I can show and give people the opportunity to feel it. That's always something I strive to do.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
There's a line on your website that gets me all like this.
Is it nervous?
No, it just gets me emotional.
Okay.
And it's one of the last lines on there. It says, it will be passed down to my daughters. And I feel weird saying that out loud. Like I go like, oh my God. So I've got a couple of questions and one's a little bit silly. Do they know what you do?
Yes.
And how do you get them ready for that? Obviously, I'm not saying are you teaching them clay sculpting, but what does it mean in your relationship to them that they will inherit a brand, they will inherit a thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I honestly don't know what I'm doing in that regard, other than just giving them confidence that they need to do whatever it is in life they choose. Whether it is continue the legacy of Sherman Field that once existed in 1967 or not, But I think, every creative endeavor, like we go full force, like making a diorama. We're not buying anything for the diorama. And so we're making everything that goes into the diorama, including the grass, and I try to offer as little creative, like it's really like I try to just maybe assist them in it. So they come up with the ideas of how do we create grass out of paper? How do we do this? How do we create a giraffe? Well, we have clay, we have paint, and we have this, so I guess in supporting all their creative endeavors, like full force, their science projects, anything we can do creatively together, really giving them that confidence. So if they do choose to run this business or another business down the line, that they'll have the know-how and the confidence where they know they can. And I think ultimately that's what we all do as parents. Like you want to give your kids the tools, like whether or not they follow in your footsteps, it doesn't really matter. But what matters is that you're giving them the tools where whatever they do, they have the confidence to do it their best and feel good about it. And I think that ultimately is the goal. So if they choose to carry on the legacy, like fantastic. But if they choose not to, that's okay too.
I think learning how to build grass from scratch is a beautiful way to learn the story of Sherman Field, beautiful way to get you ready for life, and really actually beautiful way to end a podcast. So I just want to say thank you. It's been truly a joy. I end up doing so much research into these things and then getting on and just having a chat. So
yeah, that's what
it's lovely. It's lovely. Thank you for spending the time, being so open. Really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Anytime, Joe.
And I promise I'll come up and visit and have a look.
Yeah, please do. The door's open for you.